On today's episode of the Lead More podcast, we bring on a leader who is really, really good at juggling all the different balls of life. Rebekah Scott is an entrepreneur. She's a designer. She is a podcaster. She's a coach. She's a mom, a wife, a Christian, many, many titles. And she's learned over the years, I think she would admit through trial and error, mistakes, through lessons of how to really manage all that together. And she calls that specific thing her 5 systems. And so in this episode of the podcast, like all the Lead More podcasts, we try to bring forward a framework for you, the leader, the listener, that you can take, apply, copy, paste, maybe copy, edit, paste, and make it work in your life. So in this episode, Rebekah and I break down the 5 systems. That's me, that's work, that's family, that's house, and food, each one. And she's got some really good thought-provoking questions, some things to ask yourself, some things to take a look at, inventory, and apply to your life. And so I had a really great, enjoyable conversation here with Rebekah, walking through those 5 systems, hearing how she's applied those in her life, in her business, in her family. And I think you're going to enjoy it. So without further ado, here on the Lead More podcast is Rebekah Scott. Welcome back to another episode of the Lead More podcast. I'm really excited. It's a person I haven't talked to in a while, but we go way back to early entrepreneurial days when I was a brand new entrepreneur. I think you were fairly new too, designing bags. Rebekah Scott. Yeah. Of course, you're an entrepreneur, you're a coach, a designer, an author, a Christian, a mom, a wife, doing a few things.
Yep, a few things. Farmer, rancher. We might get meat goats. Like the list goes on, you guys.
I love it. I love it. Claiming all those labels and titles. That's great.
Yeah, bring some more.
So what's new? What's been your 2024? What's keeping you interested and focused on these days? What's holding your attention?
The ages of my kiddos always holds my attention. So we just celebrated a birthday last night, and then you're like, and I'm in the unique position where my youngest just turned 9. And I'm like, whoa, wait, what? And then my oldest is now 17. So while I'm letting go of him getting into the college, meanwhile, I'm gripping my youngest. So it's the strange, it's very feelings based, and it's a lot. And then the middle 2 are just joyous and wonderful and kind of on autopilot right now. Not that we're not parenting, but it's just it's a different stage. So that's the latest family wise. And then
so is the 17-year-old, is this the last senior year of high school?
No, he's a junior yet. So I've got one more year to hold him, which I'm sure he's like, nice word, Mom. But that's what I feel like on the inside. Yeah.
Perfect. I love it. That's a lot. And that's actually a perfect segue, because with all those titles in mind and, you're a podcaster yourself and a coach, you told me a little bit about, you have like a framework of a busy, if you're a parent and an entrepreneur, you don't even have to be a parent, I suppose, just like personal life and business. It's a lot to juggle. We hear work-life balance. Then people say that's impossible. It's work-life integration. I don't know which camp you subscribe to, but there's a lot to tackle. And I'm excited to hear this. I haven't heard your framework, but I know you have a framework that you break it down into sort of each aspect of life to make it more manageable.
Absolutely.
So before we get into that, I think what I want to ask you is a question I ask every guest, typically at the end of the show, but I think this will be a good segue. What, Rebekah, is your superpower? That's the one thing you think you do better than everybody else. I make you brag.
Okay, this is a little bit embarrassing, and then it's like, oh man, that is her thing. I time everything.
Okay.
So, but please don't visualize me walking around with a stopwatch. My husband might disagree and be like, I don't know, it feels like you have a stopwatch.
Pretty close.
But I time everything, because what I've discovered is if I know the approximate time something takes, I'm less overwhelmed if the scenario comes again, or if I get derailed by life. Like, oh, we have an emergency dentist appointment because you hit the cement bench at recess. Like, wait, I remember a dentist appointment takes an hour. It'll probably take us an hour more because we have to travel in. So I time everything. And it's really funny now that the people in my loved ones in my life, and including all of my employees, are like, okay, do you know how long this is going to take? I'm like, actually, I do.
37 minutes.
Yes. And it's a little bit creepy. So I always have to round up so I seem less creepy, but secretly I do know it's 37 minutes. So that is my superpower, is knowing it, so I'm less overwhelmed and deal with less indecision, because I'm like, no, we don't have time for that. Yeah. We can't unless we take out these steps.
And do you know that, do you track it more retroactively, or do you like plan ahead? So is your calendar like just everything block,
No.
block, 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 block?
Nope. Because I'm a creator. So
Yeah.
it's like there's blocks of time and I work a lot in the ish field. But if we're like in crunching and crunching, crunching, then that timing comes to part where I'm like, guys, no, it's not happening. Or if we have to do this, then how can we get that from 2 hours to like 30 minutes? What are we going to eliminate? So then you get really decisive and you can still do it, but you can be decisive. And I was like, I know how long it takes to make 24 cookies. By the way, you guys, it's 36 minutes. I already did the timing for you. It's like 36 minutes. And so I can volunteer more easy for the school when they're like, hey, we need a couple dozen cookies for the PTA or whatever. Like, or we need 6 hours at the book fair. I'm like, give me the 9x13 all day long, or give me the dozen cookies. I'm not sitting the 6 hours. Not that that's not valid, but that's not an option for me and what I'm running.
Yeah.
But I'll sign up for those cookies. And they're like, how in the world do you do everything you do and make cookies? I'm like, because I've timed it. I just know, like, I'll run home, I'll make that, I'll be back. I look like a superhero, but I'm not. It's just because I've
that's a good
it.
answer, because that does sound like a superpower. Yes. What would if I asked your employees, what would they like? How does that show up inside a company?
It shows up when they're like, wait, when does that collection come out? And I'm like, oh, well, I'd like it to come out in 6 weeks, but I know it's going to take a week of strategy. I know it will take a week of my seamstresses and myself sewing it. I know it'll take a week of setting up the collection. So if they're like, hey, do you think we could launch that in 3 weeks and let's just hammer it out? I'm like, well, we could, but here's what that means.
Here's what it'll take. Yeah. So the ability to take something big and then breaking it down to very exact steps.
Yes. They would probably say timing is one of my super skills because I do it so often. And I can say like, hey, that MPC meeting, that's a marketing promotions calendar meeting. It usually takes us about 2 hours, but then it gets creepy because I'll be like, why did it take us 2 hours and 20 minutes this time? And they're like, oh, and it's not because I'm like, I want to shut down conversation. It's just to note, like, is this evolving? Is this actually going to take us 2.5 hours going forward because we're introducing new things? So it's not a way of like being militant, like, guys, we got to get done in 2 hours. It's just for me to note, hey, are things evolving because I know what it used to be. So it happens retroactively, but it also happens in the moment.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes, and that was a perfect like sort of lay the soil here for the framework we're going to talk about, because I feel like now I understand even why you're able to break these different aspects of life. So let's jump into the framework. Tell us, you tell me, do you want to go one at a time? Do you want an overview? Where do you want to start?
Sure, I'll do a little overview and then I'll give you a couple of things in between there. So I worked out this framework because I had an 18-month-old toddler, my son Gus, and my business was 18 months old. And it was a distinct story of why these whole systems happen, right? It's like a train wreck thinking about it. And I was trying to pack for an art show. And that was part of my business model. And it still is. I go to these craft and art shows, right? And I was trying to pack the van, and literally my email notifications were going off. My phone was going off. We still had a landline at the time, so the landline was going off. And I was worried about packing food for my husband while I was gone, which, by the way, he never asked for that. It's just like this innate Midwest thing in me. All these thoughts, right? And he kept asking for a snack in his little tiny, 2-foot body. And I kept saying, in a minute, in a minute. And then I said it like the 6th time, and I screamed at him. And I just screamed, stop, at like the ugliest, most dramatic way possible. And to this day, I still remember his little tiny blue eyes welling up like, what did he do wrong? And so I got him the snack, because no toddler ever forgets their snack. And then I knelt on the floor and just sobbed, like, how am I going to do this? Because I didn't get the message in my head, just quit, like raise him and then start your business, but like take a break. That was not the message I got. The message I got was, how can I do both? And so I canceled the show, which is a big deal in the art world. Like, they didn't invite me back for 6 years. Like, it's a thing. It's a thing. But now I'm invited back. So I canceled it, and I was like, how am I going to do this? And for me, a woman of faith, I thought, okay, God, show me how I do this. So I started a journal, and I timed everything I did that week. I just was like, okay, how long does it take me to get a snack? How long does it take me to pack for the show? How long does it take me to check emails, to make supper, to get ready, to run, to work out? And after I timed everything, then I started highlighting where things like grouped together. So there was moments when I was taking care of myself, when I was exercising and reading my Bible. There were moments when I was making food. There was moments where I was just with my family. There was moments where I was working on my business. So these systems evolved after I could like zoom out and look within and go, oh, I get this. There is like pillars here, or there are systems here that I can work within. And so then I was like, I think I can do this. So I started dialing in, like, the reason I was stressing out about packing for the show is because I was lying that I thought I could pack in 30 minutes, and it takes 2 hours. So stop lying and just think that you can get faster at it. Just note it's going to take you 2 hours. So plan ahead. Because a lot of the times when I do the coaching, we cheat on how long it's going to take. So like, I bet I can get it done. But it stresses you and your whole family out. So just get honest about it. So these systems
arrived.
Me
think of, I don't remember the name of that law or whatever they call it, but it's the gist is that a task will grow or shrink to fill the allotted amount of time.
I think it starts with a P. Yeah, something like that. And it's so true,
Parkinson's, right? I don't remember. But anyway, yeah. And so like if you do, your packing will take that much time if you give it, probably.
Oh, yeah, 1,000%. So the systems that I came about were the me system, how you take care of yourself, how do you get a full charge, and the food system, which, by the way, takes up more time than we give it credit for, like how it's answering the question, what's for supper? The family system, which is what is the legacy you're living? And what is the legacy you want to leave? Because we can all romanticize it, right? We're going to go there every time. Like, da, 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 da. But are you actually living that right now?
Yeah.
So if something tragic happened right now, are you living that? And then your home system, like, hey, when are you going to do laundry? Like, how clean do you want the house? Have you communicated that to your family? And then your work system. And that's answering the questions who, what, when, where, and why. Sometimes in my coaching, I love when I say, okay, so when are you going to work? And they're like, oh, I just fit it in. Like, how's that working for you? Because in the entrepreneur world, we'll do it till 2 a.m, but that's not always conducive to still raising a family and showing up for them as well. And so the work system just consists of answering those questions.
Okay. So interesting you use the word system. So I'm curious to kind of unpack that. So each one, I love the description of each. Tell me what a system looks like. Maybe it's best to explain one, but let's break one down.
So the me system just answered the question, how do I get a full charge? Okay, think of it, the oxygen mask thing, like put your oxygen mask before you feed your kid. Has anyone sat next to their kid and thought, yep, I'm for sure going to put it on myself? That is a terrible example. I don't think I would, John. I'd be like, give it to the child.
Thankfully, I haven't been there yet, but yeah, I agree. I
think it's terrible. So I like to think of it as your cell phone. If your cell phone starts at 39% in the morning because you forgot to plug it in, how long do you think it'll last? It'll be like 11 a.m. because we're all hyper aware of our cell phone charge. We'd like to say we aren't, but we aren't. So if we think of our bodies like that in ourselves, if we have not done the things in the morning or whatever that is, even the night before to feel a full charge, how are we going to show up for everything? We're going to die by 11 a.m. And so what would that look like in your life to get a full charge? And I love over the years of coaching, everybody's is so different. Sometimes it involves other people. Sometimes it's an alone moment. So I always say pick one recharge moment for the week and then a daily one that's just filling your tank. And so a daily one for me looks like the other thing I always say is do 2 things. Wake up before your circus. Now, in some stages of life, that's going to be 5 minutes. It'll just be like, and I don't care if you slough out and get the coffee cup, you'll feel so much better if it's before everybody else. Or if it's 2 hours. And I'm in a stage where it needs to be 2 hours before I approach all the emotions and all the things. And so that for me, that's burpees and Jesus is what I call it. I need a lot of burpees. I love them. I need Jesus. And then I need my Bible and I need to get ready by myself. And then I'm fully ready. But for some people in their stage of life, it's 5 minutes, whatever. And then pick something. So that's one little hack for the me system. Wake up 5 minutes before.
Get up before the circus. I like that a lot.
And then pick a recharge moment during the week. So that might be a date with a girlfriend that you just need to catch up. It might mean a walk. It might mean a run. I know you love that. It might mean a bubble bath. For me, it's a bubble bath and it's alone. And everybody treats it as sacred time for mommy. That's how I get my full charge daily and then also weekly. So those are 2 simple me systems because it is true. Rebekah. If you're not operating at full, it's going to bleed into all the other systems, right? It just is. Yeah.
Well, and I think I love the full charge analogy because I think often we hear in that bucket like sleep, and sleep is a huge one. I'm guessing, we all need to know what our number is. And I am guilty of sort of sometimes pushing off sleep
for sure
for other things.
Yeah.
But it's not just that. It's also, you're talking about social, you're talking about faith, you're talking about a bubble bath, a book, a run, like what I like the full charge analogy, like resonates and makes sense in my head.
And when you have zoomed out and looked at your me system, and let's say your recharge isn't working anymore, which had for me for a time, like burpees and Jesus, I was like, why do I still feel drained? And my supplement guy was like, you have to back off on the burpees. No more. Like you have to take a 2-week break because I was recycling the same stress. And so you do need to also zoom out and be like, it actually might not be more sleep. It may be more exercise, or it might be the reverse of that. So there's permission in those systems to do what works for you.
Yep. Well, just like children evolve and need different things, so does your business as a CEO. I'm sure, depending on your team size, depending on the season of your business, I'm sure.
Yep. If you pick a growth year, that looks way different for all the other systems when you're like, hey, my work system is going to take a serious charge this year. So what does that look like for family time and all that?
So all right, so let's go to
go ahead.
I was going to say food. I was curious about food next because no, I think it's great. Like we just another one that we just like underestimate. I mean, it is literally the fuel, right? So
it's the fuel. So
tell me about that system.
I laugh at this one because it's my least favorite, but it's the most one I have to operate in because I have such a large family of 6, and we farm and ranch. So like we're producers as well. This is just answering the question, what's for supper? Think about how often you ask that during the day, right? 7 a.m. you're like,
just like,
let's not worry about it. 11 a.m. you're like, I'll think about it at 4, 5, 6, you're making the phone call, right? So to the takeout or whatever that might be for you. Well, takeout is not an option because we live in the country, and I grew up West River. So like I can count on one hand the number of times we went out to eat because it just wasn't available. However, you have to answer that question. And because I create for a living, as you can see in my background, I want every last ounce of energy spent on creating, not thinking about food. So what's for supper? I always recommend 2 simple things in the food system is ask yourself what's for supper and do it before 9 a.m. And even if all you do is make the decision, like it's spaghetti, fine. If you want to take it one step further and you're like, I'm going to get out the marinara sauce, I'm going to get out the noodles, I would like, you can do that step, but just answer it so that when it pops up in your head, you're like, oh, I already made that decision. It's so little tiny thing, but it makes a big difference. And then also this is from my 4-H years, you guys, just grocery shop 1 time a week. How many times are you on the way home? They're like, hey, stop and get some sour cream.
2 items.
And then you're like, and of course, I've timed that. That's like 45 minutes of precious time that could have been spent in your family system, resting on the floor with the kids when you're getting the sour cream. So
that's great. Yeah.
Just grocery shop 1 time a week. And then also permission. It doesn't have to be you. Like you don't have to do the grocery shop. Like see if your kiddo loves doing that, fine, make that. But those 2 decisions will make your food system better. And I, of course, dive into more details of the food system, but those are 2 small things that we just drastically underestimate how much of our time is spent feeding and fueling our family.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if this would resonate with you, maybe being a West River, probably DIY type of person.
Oh, yeah.
But I find in my coaching a lot, I'm giving entrepreneurs, CEOs the permission to delegate or to hand off. Like maybe it's a virtual assistant, maybe it's a house manager, maybe I know unless you really love mowing the lawn, like maybe there's the neighborhood kid who would love 10, 15, $20 to mow your lawn. Right. And so like giving yourself permission to delegate some of those things, I thought that was a good comment there.
And there's so many cool food systems out there now. Like we give tons of examples of how to do it, but you can have your food like delivered in a refrigerated box, I think, and just start from there. Like that's amazing. So it just helps if you really zoom out again and look and go, oh, all of these decisions that feel chaotic and overwhelming revolve around food. So let's talk about food. Let's think of a system for our family.
Well, and the decide by 9 a.m. thing is great. You hear, I know Obama always said he wears a blue or a black suit. So he has to make so many decisions all day long. And that's just one less decision he had to make. And so if you think of your sort of battery analogy of how many decisions you have to make as a CEO, as a creative, as a mom, just having that done with is huge.
So good. It's so huge. Plus, when your kids get used to it, they're like, I don't want that set out for dinner. I'm like, okay.
Maybe they stop asking too. Right? Like they know it's already decided.
Yeah. It depends on the kiddo, right? This one relaxes, this one stresses out. But that's a whole other thing. Which kind of brings you into like the family system.
Okay.
And this is like, what legacy are you living and what is the one that you want to leave behind? Do they match up? And this is not for anybody to stress out and be like, like big lofty idea, but just really practically, what are the things that you want your family to be known for? And because I always get really overwhelmed with my husband, we're like, oh my gosh, we have to teach them what? We have to do the sheer amount of stuff by the time they're 18. By the way, we're still leaning and learning all about parenting, right? I can't give parenting advice, but something that works for my family is we each made a list of 10 values that we both thought were really important to us. And then we found out where we had 3 that intersected. Okay. And so for Nick and I, that's honesty, kindness, and being humble. And so we thought when the kids and the teachers and anybody outside of us talks about the Scotts, they'll say, man, those kids are kind, humble, and honest. And
I
then
like that.
their prayers at night, the kids will end their prayer by saying, help me be kind, humble, and honest. So it just naturally started becoming a part of our language. We also have a pretty sign in our house that says what the Scots are and when we were established. But it's helped me with the overwhelm of parenting and family to be like, oh, let's just keep concentrating on these. So if you're picking on your sister or you're lying to me, hey, Scots are honest. What's going on? Like, let's talk about this. Or if you're bragging at the basketball game, like, hey, where's your humble bone? Like, no. Somebody's going to shut you down real quick. So that's part of the family system, is like walking through what do you want your values to be? And then also like having very clear conversations about expectations. So the 2 little hacks for the family system is have a honey huddle. We actually have this as a free resource, but it's a monthly meeting with your spouse. Okay. And it talks over, well, I'm looking at mine right here. It talks over your calendar, like both yours and your spouse's. It talks over your budget. It talks over date night, like plan that out. That's important to Nicholas and I. It talks about home projects. We're big DIYers, so we love that kind of thing. And then we have our businesses listed out because there's quite a few of them. But this, and then there's also a question in there like, hey, do you have expectations for this month? Because here's the thing, if you know in your work calendar, you want to record X amount of podcasts and that's going to require a lot more quietness. And he's like, I was going to work on the basement. I'm like, hey, these two do not align. And so we could avoid the like complicated like anger about what we each had planned because we talked about it. And so the expectations talk is just big. And it's just a fun honey huddle. It takes about, imagine this, guys, I timed it. It takes about 35 minutes, but Nick and I have been practicing it for about 10 years now. But I just love it because then there's an overview of the month and the expectations are laid out. And we
same
can be
time
on the same
every
page.
Month, or when do you guys do that?
Oh, no, just the first part of the month.
Okay.
First part of the month, we take a look at it. And then we actually have it's a whole thing. Then we have an interview for each one of the kids. We ask them how we're doing and we give them some advice. So it's a big, like, it's a honey huddle and then it's a family huddle of like, hey, are we living out what we set out to do? So that
a lot of those stories reminded me of running a business, right? Like, you know, we used to always talk about Lemonly core values is how we hire, it's how we promote. Like you've very much clearly established what your family stands for. Yes. I love that.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then I think we often throw this legacy word around pretty loosely, but I love the like the day-to-day like gut check. Are we embodying that?
Because here's the truth. I think it's that conversation about quality over quantity. You guys, your kids will remember the quantity. They will not. I mean, they'll remember the quality because Disney is really fun, right? And they'll remember the mountains or the beach or whatever it is. But if you think back at your memories, some of your most fondest memories are the everydayness, like that we ate at the dining room table, that mom always went for a walk with us if we were doing whatever. Or so the quantity, that's that everyday stuff that if you don't plan for how your family is living, what do you want them to remember?
Yeah, I was thinking about that as you were talking. I think I would almost it'd be easier for me to describe the values that my parents raised our family than it would be to remember an 8-year-old vacation, right? To your point.
Yes.
Like I might be speaking broadly and in general terms, but I could certainly speak to what they wanted us to embody and instill. Yeah.
Nick and I are trying something this year, so don't take it away just yet. But we thought of this phrase to help with our honey huddle is we're trying to lead with fun this year. So like you said, you're thinking about your parents and I'm like, would ours say we just led with schedules as you're hearing me say all this? I'm like, we're going to lead with fun. And we told the kids. And so now when we do things, they're saying like, Mom, how could we make this more fun when it's just a mundane trip because we live in the country all the way in? So we are singing karaoke more. Like we're trying it. And I can't help but think that's going to become a part of our family system when they were like, well, Mom and Dad were certainly spontaneous. Me more than Nicholas so far, but
sure. I love that. There was a lot of good ones in that one. That's great. Okay, so family. So that takes us to what? To work? Or what's next?
Yeah, or we could do home. So work is a big part of our life. Well, let's do work because it is such a big part of our life. And home is my newest system that I'm developing. Work is answering the who. Who are you working with? So this is like your question where you're like, guys, you don't have to mow the lawn. Like maybe you need a VA. So ask yourself, if you are the owner or if you're working for someone, who are you working with? Then ask yourself, when are you working? And I love this one because people are like, I had no idea I was only working 20
8 to
hours.
5. Yeah.
Or I had no idea I was working 70 hours. No wonder all the other systems are stressed. You're working 70 hours, or 80 or 90. So ask yourself when you're working, and then you honor by blocking it in. Ask yourself where you work. this could be dumb because you're like, I work in my office. Well, in my line of coaching, it might be the dining room table. It might be the pickup line. So let's just talk about your wear. And are you actually burning holes in the floor? You're getting so much done. So let's talk about your wear. It could be a park bench. There's permission there too. And then your why, which also, is a really sexy word, is why are you working? Guys, don't do that. Don't do that. Because you're going to change your mind in 5 years, as you know, and you may change your mind in 10 years, but you should generally know why you're doing it. Yeah.
Well, and I think where I had to reframe was not just the why, but finding your identity in your work, right? And really letting that maybe define us too much.
Yes, absolutely.
Certainly connects with evaluating all those systems equally.
Yep, absolutely.
And you're right. I think even, Lemonly, we used to always do remote work, but the where really changed in COVID, right?
For many everybody. Of us. Yeah.
And I think that's what was the hardest part, is when you would leave your office, aka your bedroom, and then walk into the living room, and it kind of just they all just bled together. It felt like we were working. The when was always, the where was everywhere.
So it's interesting, is I've been doing that for almost 20 years now. I've worked from home before everybody was doing it, and so when I employ people too, I have to teach them systems on how to do it, so that they aren't sitting at the dining room table at 5:45, their wife's trying to get supper on. They're like, let me finish this email. That might be a little tense. Let's talk about how to do that. And then there's some other questions in the work system, but it's just answering those questions will help you define more of the parameters of when work should and shouldn't happen.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. So if let's say I got the who, I love the team, the people, but maybe my when and where are a little off track. They're bleeding into my family system. They're not allowing me to be fully charged.
Yes.
Then what do I do?
Yes. Well, take a look at I would go to the timing thing. Take a look at, dial in, what are you working on? How long is it taking you? If the email is taking you too long, do you need that VA if you can afford that? Or is it just somebody to order the supplies? Or do you need a sales force? Maybe you need a sales position, but sometimes hiring is not an option. So it might just be getting honest with, after you've timed things and you realize, whoa, I'm spending a lot of time at this and I don't want to do this, or wherever that is. Maybe this isn't the year to take on this new project.
Sure.
Because my family is in transition. We have 3, my kiddos go to 4 different buildings. Do you know the sheer amount of emails that come from 4 different buildings in a large school district? I'm I have to plan more time I have to get a different email address, because I need to treat this as I check into my schools this time. So I would recommend, if you're getting overwhelmed, take a look at what are you doing? Is it still necessary? And then how to move the other pieces to make it necessary or unnecessary.
So I have to ask, because usually I hate the what app do you use, or what, people get really lasered in on tools or books, or they're very prescriptive, and really this is more of the philosophy or the framework that matters. And maybe this speaks back to your superpower, but I am curious, this is the level of detail of time tracking is pretty in depth here. So
it's that.
How do you I don't know if you ever heard of this guy. Do you remember the guy Rob Deerdeck? He's a skateboarder guy, an entrepreneur, probably about our vintage. Okay. He's gone on a lot of podcasts. He's now apparently he tracks his life to the minute, and has been for a decade. It sounds kind of like you, but maybe in a different approach.
Sure.
But I'll send you a link. You can listen to it. And essentially, it's a lot of what you're saying. It's just the level of awareness that we discover after we look at are our actions matching our words, right? And so just give me a brief, even the work, who, when, where, why. How do you kind of diagnose and capture all that information?
I'm a big pencil all day long. Okay. So pencil and paper, because it's not as permanent. So it's probably a therapy thing I need to walk through, but I love a pencil. When I do it, I literally just bring around a notebook, and I'm okay, Monday's at the top. I don't use a lot of digital tools because I don't want my kids to think I was on my phone all the time. That's a super convicting thing for me. So as much as possible, I head to notebooks. So I'm not the tool person, you guys. However, I do have a timing sheet as a free resource on our website. But there's such a time in it there. So that's where I look at things there. And then during meetings, I'm writing on, whether it's the Google app, the Google Doc. I'll write in the corner how long that meeting took. Just so we have an idea the next time. When I'm recording a podcast, that piece of paper right there that's going through my questions in my outline, I write at the top how long it took me to record that podcast. just so that I've got an idea. When I'm cooking a certain meal, the first things that I look at is like, how long is the prep time, the cook time, and the deliverables? So like, is this going to be worth it? If it's an hour and a half, I am out, not in the stage of life,
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's that diagnose what you're thinking as far as tools. And then here's a really funny thing. Maybe funny is not the right word, but provocative is I even recorded a podcast on it. I threw my planner away.
Okay.
So I do not operate on a planner, but I do have an agenda sheet. And that's actually one of my tools, and it's a resource of ours, so that at the end of the week, I get to throw something away. The planner was just like the biggest, it felt like 20 pounds on my shoulders of like, put your planner away. And then guess what? Take 2 hours on Sunday to fill it out again. No, thank you.
Yeah, I feel that way a little bit about like moleskins, like the amount of these that I have that are half
so
finished.
Beautiful. Right?
And then you get another one at a conference. But you just kind of think that someday that one idea, you're going to need it.
I think John Acuff is the only one who actually implements this moleskin. So I put everything on a piece of paper so that I can erase it, I can change it, and I can throw it away at the end of the week. Now, I have not completed everything on the sheet of paper. So yes, I am transferring some things that didn't occur onto the next week. But the fact that I don't carry this like 3-inch binder along with me, I feel like a rebel. So that's another tool.
Like the pencil analogy. I imagine with 4 kids, multiple businesses, and this mantra of embracing the fun. Mm-hmm. You don't strike me as someone who draws a hard line. If something's 38 minutes, you're out.
Oh no.
If it's something's more than an hour, it's a no.
No. I should. Yes, I'm so glad you're pointing this out, because that is not how I operate. It's more a mindset of, okay, well now I know. Like I knew for my toddlers, because I got good at timing, I'm like, wow, tantrums for this kid take 45 minutes. Why is that? So then I could evaluate their diet. Maybe I could narrow down it's after they have licorice. Like that's what's going on with this kid. Now, again, that sounds super detailed, but it isn't. It starts by just being aware of the time. And then,
and if you were to go to the doctor and he had a rash, they would say those same type of things, like let's do a food journal, or let's do it. Absolutely.
Yeah. So the timing is just, I'm definitely not in the corner like, guys, this is taking 38 minutes, because when it started out like that, as first, full confession here, and I was so humbled. One of my daughters said to me, apologized to me. We were doing something. She said, Mommy, I'm sorry, I'm wasting your time. Oh. And you want to talk about, wow. And that was like 10 years ago. And then I started going, this is not what it's supposed to be. It's just supposed to be an awareness. And so thankfully she hasn't said it yet, but guys, I'm human, it could get there again. But that was like, okay, how do I do this more as an awareness and less about this is what we do when? It changed everything.
I mean, the phone one hits me like my daughters are 8 and 5, and I like to think that I'm being ultra productive and multitasking and bringing work with me, but also bringing family. Mm-hmm. But you're right. Like I don't want them to go to college and say, "Oh, my dad was always on his phone."
Yes.
I think there's still time, hopefully, to fix that.
There is. Yeah. Just be the rebel that misses the messages. And and I'm in the privilege that I get to tell my team that too. Like I say, I never treat it as like, what's the common phrase? Business isn't personal. I'm like, bull. Like I'm literally raising my babies at my sewing machine in the background here. I think about the spouses and their children and the positions that I'm giving them. How will this trickle down to their families? Am I being as flexible for their families as I get to be for mine? Yeah. So, we're late on things because I'm like, well, I had to prioritize this.
Yep. Good for you to stick to it. Bring us to the last one then. You said you're developing, or the most recent one is home. Let's talk about that.
Well, I started realizing it started with 4 systems. And then I'm like, there is a home system here, because the home system isn't necessarily your family system. And your home system is how you're doing the things within your home to create a sanctuary. Because it is, you guys, it's your safe place to land, right? Why do we always say, like, I can't wait to get home? It's your safe place to land. And then there's permission here, too. If your home is like, it's its own area of chaos, the one simple hack is that 4 feet right before you walk in whatever door that is to your house. It's probably not your front door. It's probably your garage, believe it or not. Just tidy that up. Like, put a cute little rug there. Put the canister to put your keys in, your phone in. Your phone in would be huge, you guys. And it can be done. Like whatever, that 4 feet. So, and then I put a quote on that door. Like, I enter in with joy. That's something personally that I want on there. What would yours be? And so then there's a moment of like, check myself, and I come in. Here's the other thing. I don't get to use it that often because I work from home. But my husband uses that door when he walks in with his muddy clothes from chores and all of that. And so it's a moment for him to be like, okay, this is my sanctuary. How would I show up different? So
Yeah,
your home
that's
system.
great.
And again, I mean, we all have to answer the question, when do we do the laundry? And sometimes it becomes chaotic because we've never actually picked. We're like, oh, I just do a load a day, which I think is gross. I would never want to do that. But I know it works for some people. But just have a plan. What is your laundry plan? What is your cleaning plan? Have you ever sat down and been like, oh, well, I've tried this Pinterest and I've tried this Pinterest and I've tried, but what works for your family? Isolate it and be like, we just need to work on how we're going to clean this place up because we're not living harmoniously with one another. And I think it's just because I like folded blankets instead. Like, okay, I can honor that. It's very simple. The systems are simple because you get to choose for your own family, but it's mostly just helping you to be decisive. We just don't get the chance to be decisive because we've never narrowed it down.
That makes me think of a question. Talk to me about how, you don't strike me as a CEO that would be too power yielding in terms of my way or the highway.
Oh,
but at the end of the day, CEO, like the buck stops with you. But how about in the context of the family? So you and Nick are having your monthly meeting and you do decide that you like your towels folded differently.
Yep.
What does that conversation look like?
He would say, why? And I'm like, because it stresses me out when everything is a mess. If my towels are folded nicely when I get to my bathroom at night, I'm like, okay, I'm going to make it another day. And he's like, seriously? It's a towel? I'm like, it is. He's like, okay. And then I could throw it back on him. Like, what is it for you? And he's like, I just don't like yelling. Even if it's happy yelling, noise is a thing for Nicholas. I'm like, okay, so a dull roar? He's like, yeah. And preferably not a kiddo approaching me on the hoverboard. Like, it's too chaotic for him. We think it's fun, but we can honor that. I'm like, hey guys, I just heard Dad open the door. Get off the hoverboard. So it's just like, it's more conversations about like respecting, and not being like, well, that's not going to happen, which we have. We have conversations where like, listen, the towels are going to be folded everywhere in the house, but which ones? I'm like, okay, fine. The ones in my bathroom. Okay,
sure.
Got it. Which, by the way, that's a facetious one. It's not the towels for me.
Okay,
it's the front
that's not
rug.
actually your thing.
It's the rug. Like, if just the rug, when we walk in, is not folded up from the animals and the kids, if just the rug is laid flat and the countertops are there, that's another thing we say for the home system. Tell your spouse 2 things that got to happen before they come home, and each of you respect it. Because the truth is, would be like, especially as women, I'm like, this. And he's like, that's not going to happen. So tell me the 2 things. I'm like, countertops and the rug. Like, okay, I got it. And then same thing for him. Like, what are the 2 things? Dull roar, and what else would he say? He wants to smell supper, which may seem like, ooh, that's, what would I say? Like, oh, that's antiquated, but that's not. If he wants to smell supper, fine. I'll have it simmering, whatever. That's an easy thing to do. So it's kind of in perspective as well.
I like the attention to these kind of nuanced things that might seem real small, but like it's
make
okay
a
if
huge
they matter.
Difference, you guys, right?
Yeah.
Why do we have the big blowout? Because we haven't been mentioning these little tiny things that could have been easy
pile up,
easy fixes. If you're like, I don't know, I folded towels or anything, but whatever.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take this a step further now in terms of application. I love the systems. We got the five different ones. But you mentioned something when we were just talking before we hit record about someone might say, I love all these. I took so many notes. Like, where the hell do I start? Talk about that. Maybe it's not boil the ocean at once. Which ones do you recommend leading with, and how do we go from one to the next?
Yeah. You also mentioned balance. I don't think balance is out there. I think making a harmony of both home and work life. And I always say do home and work life with joy. So how would you do that? If you zoom out, so just picture yourself, now that you know the framework, the 5 systems, you zoom out, which one feels the most broken to you? And start there.
Yeah.
Preferably you guys don't start with work, because that's such a good to-do list where we're like, I got this. Yeah. Don't start with that one. I would say that.
Yeah, that's good.
Usually start with me, because if you got the full charge, but not sacrificially, you guys, please do not listen to the language of like, me. Don't do that. Don't do that, because it'll bleed into all the others. But do take care of yourself. Find out the charge moment. So work on your me system. What would that look like? And then probably food, because we underestimate the amount of time food will take. And then family, because that's a big one. And I'm a woman of faith, so I'm going to answer a lot of questions about how I raised them and who I taught them to be. And I spent a ton of time with my family. So I would like that system to be dialed in and joyful for all of us. And then home and work. So you get to pick the order, but for yourself, zoom out and go, oh my gosh, you guys, our home system is a wreck. I'm so sick of it being so chaotic when I walk in this house. Okay, let's start with that one. Just do a couple small things in that system.
Yeah, that's good. And that one seems like very like you could tackle that one fairly quickly if you're looking for a quick
Yeah.
win.
Yeah, it's the most
Um,
practical thing to apply. Yeah.
yeah, the family, the legacy, the core values one really spoke to
Mhm.
me because I think
Mhm.
it's easy for like I think I'm a present parent, but it also just feels like the days and weeks just sort of
Yes.
get away from you.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
before I was a parent, I never really liked when people were like, well, they grow up so fast. It's just so trite. Like everybody says
Yes.
it to you. They
Yeah.
grow up, but then you realize there's reasons why
Yeah.
trite things are trite, right? Because it's
Yes.
true.
Mhm.
Um, and so if we're kind of aimlessly parenting or aimlessly living our family legacy,
Yeah.
it just
Yeah.
I remember I just thought core values gave so much clarity in the business context. So why not
Mm. Yeah,
in the
absolutely.
family context?
A really good resource for that is way outside of me, but I love him. It's Pat Lencioni. His
Mm-hmm.
book, The Three Big Questions for a Frantic Family, that's
Yep.
where that, I don't know if that originated from there. That was kind of a merriment in two books, but that book, oh boy, if you can run a business well, you can run a family well. And he really dials it in.
I've read a lot of Lencioni. I haven't heard that one, like
Oh,
ideal
so
team
good.
player. And yeah,
Yep.
those are good ones.
Yeah, he
Cool.
talks about it's its least downloaded, but it's most profound. I'm like, that's true. It was good.
Cool.
Real good.
All right. So tell me, Rebecca, what does
Mhm.
this look like when you are you coaching generally like
Mhm.
other creative like fashion entrepreneurs or what like who are
Oh,
you
no.
typically working with when you're breaking this down with somebody?
I'm working with overwhelmed moms who are usually starting a small business or working for someone. They
Okay.
have clients. So it might be service based, it might be product based, because I definitely have, I'm a handcrafted business with 20 employees. Who does that? Not a lot. They go to a manufacturer, and I've been able not to do that. And I pride myself on that because we have some stuff that works. So I usually just coach women that are overwhelmed with trying to do both home and work life. And so it looks different for everybody. But if that's the case, guys, I have like 250 episodes. You can listen to that, pick up a ton of practical things. I don't do anything that I haven't tried first. So
Yes.
sometimes I have to pop back on, on a podcast and say, guys, never mind. Don't, it doesn't work.
Back up. Back up.
back up, refine. Yeah, that's the majority of who I coach and want to
Cool.
encourage. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I wrote a few notes of some of those resources that you mentioned, so
Oh,
I'll put
good.
those in the show
Oh,
notes.
sure.
And
Sure.
gosh, thanks for coming on and breaking this down. This is
Yes.
great. I think we think of when you think of leaders, we often go to that work bucket quickly.
Yeah.
But I think
Yep.
you're right that all these systems got. I like the harmony
Yeah.
word. Got to make
Yeah.
sure we got them all covered.
Yeah. I mean, my kids aren't going to say, like, Mommy, how many purses did you make? But they're going to say, hey, did you spend time with me? And that's
Yeah.
really convicting for me. So,
yeah, that's great. Well, thanks for the time,
Mhm.
Rebecca. I loved having you on the
Yes.
show.
Oh, thank you so much, John.
All right. Thanks so much, Rebecca, for coming on the show. Really enjoyed that conversation. I loved her energy, her perspective. And one thing I really liked, great leadership modeling there at the end. She said, I don't talk about anything that I don't first try myself. So I love that her podcasts are based on things she's trying, she's experimenting and implementing. In the show notes, you can check out, she has the Academy for her 5 systems. There's actually a self-guided course. She told me offline, it takes less than 6 hours to do. So link that up. If that seems like something that you're interested and you want to go deeper, check out that link it's on the Encourager podcast. And remember, all Lead More episodes are now here in video format, so you can listen wherever you are used to, Apple, Spotify, but you can also watch. YouTube.com/John T. Meyer _ is where you can find that. So you can find all these episodes on YouTube if you want to see what the guest looks like, if you want to engage, listen in the background, or watch along with us. That's all for now. Of course, laters, take care and be well.